So I've grabbed one of my favorite teacher books that I reference all the time when writing papers or thinking about certain situations that I'm in as I currently study to become a teacher. And so, the book that I'll be reading today, or that I'll be reading from, because it's a long book, is called Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain, Promoting Authentic Engagement and Rigor Among Culturally and Linguistically Diverse Students, by Zaretta Hammond. It's a super awesome book that I really enjoy, and I hope you'll enjoy just hearing some of it as well. Okay, so I'll read a little bit about the author, and then I'll pick some excerpts from different parts of the book. Zaretta Hammond is a former classroom English teacher who has been doing instructional design, school coaching, and professional development around the issues of equity, literacy, and culturally responsive teaching for the past 18 years. She teaches as a lecturer at St. Mary's College, School of Education, in California. In addition to consulting and professional development, she has been on staff at national education reform organizations, including the National Equity Project and the former Bay Area School Reform Collaborative. She has trained instructional coaches in reading development, especially targeted at students of color and English learners. She has also designed national seminars such as the 3-day Teaching with a Cultural Eye series for teachers and school leaders. She is regularly invited to present at regional and national conferences. She has authored articles that have appeared in publications such as Phi Delta Kappa. Along with a focus on culturally responsive teaching, Ms. Hammond has a strong research agenda around literacy, vocabulary development, and equity. She has designed culturally responsive tutor training programs aimed at volunteer reading tutors for a variety of nonprofit organizations. She is currently designing a literacy program to accelerate low reading skills among high school students. She holds a master's in secondary English education. She also writes the popular ReadyForRigor.com blog. Zaretta is the proud parent of 2 young adult children, both of whom she taught to read before they went to school. She resides in Berkeley, California with her husband and family. And you can see her picture there. So, this book really, what I think is the best part about this book is that it ties kind of the more, I guess it would be more of sociological and psychological components of teaching with the specific, like, physiology or brain chemistry. It marries them so that way you can kind of understand the science behind some of this stuff. Just because I think when you deal in the soft sciences, like psychology and sociology, it can get a little confused and a little muddied as to how it is still very much rooted in hard sciences. And so that's something really cool. And I think it just helps give the knowledge in a way that is more understandable for pre-service teachers like myself, as well as current teachers that want to learn more and do better to welcome all backgrounds and folks into their classroom. So I'm going to read. This is directly from Hammond, who has a paragraph about her intention of this book. out of the realm of mystery into concreteness. For too long, culturally responsive teaching has been relegated to this realm of magic and mystery, knowledge that only a select few possess. When we were able to recognize and name a student's learning moves and not mistake culturally different ways of learning and making meaning for intellectual deficits, we are better able to match those moves with powerful teaching response. My intention in this book is to expand teachers' vocabulary for talking about culturally responsive teaching, especially for underperforming culturally and linguistically diverse students. For too long, the conversation has been dominated by the idea of the, quote, culture of poverty as an organizing social and intellectual frame for teaching marginalized culturally and linguistically diverse students. In these pages, I offer new concepts and frames for thinking about culturally responsive teaching as an extension of brain-based learning. Turning concepts into practices takes focused feedback and reflection. My hope is that soon this book in your hands will be highlighted, underlined, and dog-eared as you use it to build your background knowledge and culturally responsive toolkit. May it lead you into many rich conversations with your colleagues about leveraging the natural learning systems of culturally diverse students in our ongoing efforts to close the achievement gap. Alright, so now I'm in the first chapter, Climbing Out of the Gap, and I want to read a paragraph or a section called The Marriage of Neuroplasticity and Culturally Responsive Teaching. I can't tell you the number of times someone has asked me for the culturally responsive, quote, cheat sheet for working with African American, Latino, or even Middle Eastern students. A number of teachers who have asked me about culturally responsiveness think of it as a bag of tricks. Far from being a bag of tricks, culturally responsive teaching is a pedagogical approach firmly rooted in learning theory and cognitive science. When used effectively, I lost my place. Oh no. When used effectively, culturally responsive pedagogy has the ability to help students build intellective capacity, also called fluid intelligence, and intellective competence. Intellective capacity is the increased power the brain creates to process complex information more effectively rather. Neuroscience tells us that culture plays a critical role in this process. That's why it is important for culturally responsive teachers to be well versed in brain science and cultural understanding. Beyond knowing the brain science, the biggest challenge I see teachers struggling with is how to operationalize culturally responsive pedagogical practices principles into culturally responsive teaching practices. It means understanding the basic concepts of culturally responsive pedagogy and then learning the instructional moves associated with them. The Ready for Rigor framework is designed to help teachers do just that with the aid of neuroscience to deepen your understanding. This simple framework organizes key areas of teacher capacity, building that set the stage for helping students move from being dependent learners to self-directed, independent learners. And so you can take a look at this Ready for Rigor framework here. And I'll read you the key components of the Ready for Rigor. So the first component is awareness. Understand the three levels of culture. Recognize cultural archetypes of individualism and collectivism. Understand how the brain learns. Acknowledge the socio-political context around race and language. Know and own your cultural lens. Recognize your brain triggers around race and culture. Broaden your interpretation of culturally and linguistically diverse students' learning behaviors. In the learning partnership section, reimagine the student and teacher relationship as a partnership. Take responsibility to reduce student social emotional stress from stereotype threat and microaggressions. Balance giving students both care and push. Help students cultivate a positive mindset and sense of self-efficacy. Support each student to ownership for their own learning, and give students language to talk about their learning moves. In the information processing section, providing appropriate challenge in order to stimulate brain growth to increase intellective capacity. Help students process new content using methods from oral traditions. Connect new content to culturally relevant examples and metaphors from students' community and everyday lives. Provide students authentic opportunities to process content. Teach students cognitive routines using the brain's natural learning systems. And use formative assessments and feedback to increase intellective capacity. And community of learners and learning environment section says, create an environment that is intellectually and socially safe for learning. Make space for student voice and agency. Build classroom culture and learning around communal sociocultural tasks, talk, and task structures. Use classroom rituals and routines to support a culture of learning. And use principles of restorative justice to manage conflicts and redirect negative behavior. The next part I want to read is from the What's Culture Got to Do with It chapter in this section titled, But I Have 19 Different Cultures in My Classroom. Quote, I have 19 different cultures represented in my classroom. Do I have to learn about the customs, foods, and beliefs of 19 different cultures? This is the question I always get from teachers new to culturally responsive teaching. The key to understand how culture guides the brain during culturally responsive teaching lies in focusing on deep culture, rather than focusing on the visible fruits of culture, dress, food, holidays, and heroes. We have to focus on the roots of culture, worldview, core beliefs, and group values. The answer to this question comes from the understanding universal patterns across cultures. I call these similarities cultural archetypes. While cultures might be different at the surface and shallow levels, at the root of different cultures there are common values, worldviews, and practices that form these archetypes. The term archetype has its origin in ancient Greek. It comes from the root word archean, which means original or old, and the word typos, which means pattern, model, or type. While there might be a number of different cultures represented in one's classroom, when we look closer, we see patterns that unite some cultures. Understanding these cultural archetypes can make culturally responsive teaching more manageable in a diverse classroom. Cultural archetypes give us a starting point. And so I'm going to read this little final section on cultural archetypes. There are two cultural archetypes that I think are important for the culturally responsive teacher to know: collectivism and individualism. A common cultural archetype connected with a deep culture is a group's orientation toward either collectivism or individualism. Collectivism and individualism reflect fundamentally different ways the brain organizes itself. Turns out our brains are wired to favor a communal view of the world. Humans have always sought to be in community with each other because it enhances our chances of survival. We shared workloads and resources. Over time, our brains became hardwired toward working and living cooperatively. As people moved from rural communities to urban communities, they became less communal and more individualistic. Dutch sociologist Kurt Hofstede found that approximately 20% of the world has an individualistic culture, while the other 80% practice a collectivist culture. Most European cultures were rooted in an individualistic mindset, while the collectivist worldview is common among Latin American, Asian, African, Middle Eastern, and many Slavic cultures. Collectivist society emphasizes relationships, interdependence within a community, and cooperative learning. Individualistic societies emphasize individual achievement and independence. There's a chart that kind of just goes through and breaks down individualism and collectivism. And under individualism, it says focused on independence and individual achievement, emphasizes self-reliance and the belief that one is supposed to take care of himself to get ahead. Learning happens through individual study and reading. Individual contributions and status are important. Competitive, technical/analytical. And under collectivism, it says focused on interdependence and group success. resources of the group, and the belief that group members take care of